So it's either simply a stay of execution or the beginning of one of the greatest title comebacks that we will ever see. Manchester City showing glimpses of life. Damien Delaney is with us. Hey, Damien.
Hi Joe, how are you?
That was a fun game, actually. Even at 0-0, I thought it was a fun game, and then it just
Yeah,
went up several levels.
yeah, I was enthralling. I must say that. I mean, very often during that game, I was telling my kids to shush, be quiet, and asking the wife to take them out. Such was the level of intensity as I was trying to watch it with. So it was a great spectacle. Not spectacular, but it was a top quality game.
Kids, shush.
I'm at work.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just lively. Because I wasn't looking forward to it that much. I was kind of thinking, oh, they're shadows of their former selves. You know, it's gonna be okay-ish. But actually, there was a fair bit of quality to both teams. Like when they played well, they both really played well.
Yeah, I was, the first half, Man City had such dominance and such control. One of the thoughts that popped into my head was Arne Slot doesn't like playing against low blocks. Well, like, he won't like teams that dominate possession either. So I was thinking to myself, if he can't reverse this, because obviously if City are dominating the ball, Liverpool should be able to counter-attack, and they weren't, and they were just pinned in pretty much for the whole of the first half. But to their credit, they came out second half and they got themselves moving, not blisteringly, but they kind of got themselves in the game a little bit. And it was interesting. There was an awful lot of talking points or interesting things that I spotted throughout the game. But yeah, it was a good contest.
The Subslife free kick is just outrageous, isn't it?
Unbelievable. Geez, when I know they were saying you should put more on the wall. I thought the positioning of the wall was slightly off, because, and I'll tell you why. From that distance, the only thing that beats Donnarumma is power. And to get power, it laces. Therefore, it's going to come straight at the start. The way he had the wall set up was almost as if he was trying to stop a bending free kick, for that one that gets arched outside the width of the goal and then just creeps in at the near post. But from that distance, an arcing free kick, he'll read. So I just thought that he would have been better off just moving them two steps to their right. And if he moved them two steps to their right, then he obviously, I know that would have looked more down the line of the ball, but that was the only thing that was going to beat him, was down the line, because there was no way he was going to bend that over the wall, or there was no way that he was going to arc that outside and creep it in at the far post. So I think his positioning, I think I don't have too huge an issue with from that distance, but it was a quality strike. It
Yeah.
really was. It was absolutely milled out the middle.
He's quality. I mean, he's so good. He's
Yeah.
been so good in such a bad season for Liverpool, no matter where he plays.
Yeah, he's such a good professional, and he's got such a good appetite for the game. He looked really fresh. He looked really hungry. He looks like he's got an appetite for the game. And even at right back, he filled in and did a great job. No, I think it's a travesty that he's not playing central midfield, because if you had his energy in the midfield, would have given Liverpool so much more impetus in the game. But having him at right back, he's never going to like skin people, get crosses in the box, bounce passes, especially with Salah in front of him. But he's a solid option, and you know that even with Salah's not tracking back, he's going to defend really well, and he's going to use the ball well, and he's going to work hard to win it back. But I just feel all those skills for me are just wasted over on the right hand side. I would much prefer them in the middle of the park. You'd have got much more value out of him from a Liverpool point of view.
So by this stage, Pep is properly slumped. You know what I mean? Like he's sliding in the seat. He does this weird thing where like he keeps spitting, but he keeps the spit on his lip for a few seconds. It's very off-putting.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's just,
Yeah.
it's not a good look, you know.
Yeah. Look,
Um,
listen, they were down and out. They,
yeah,
they looked they looked. I mean, he looked beaten, but you got to give Man City credit. For them to rally and to get back in the game, and for them to get it back to 1-1 was brilliant. And even then, I mean, pretty much the last 15 minutes of that game, the Premier League's done. It's over. Even a draw, I don't think Arsenal get caught. And I was sitting going, "Jesus, it's going to be a procession now." Because even if Arsenal can afford a couple of bad games, because not only does it, we talk, I spoke about, Man City putting pressure on Arsenal. Like, if the gap remains 6 to 9 points, like, Man City are going to lose hope eventually, and they're going to be like, "Geez, we just can't get a head of steam up." So like they'll probably the stuffing will be knocked out of them, and then it's a procession,
yeah,
really till the end of the season. So I was glad from a neutral point of view that it transpired the way it did.
yeah. And like, because in fairness to Haaland, he wasn't getting much change out of Van Dijk, and it was a tricky game. But he wins the header, and they get back into it, and then he scores the penalty.
Yeah.
And obviously, then there's the drama at the end. I'd even just forgotten until I was looking back through it this morning, and this is after like City have gone ahead. The McAllister, the kind of takes a bit of a deflection, and
Yeah.
it's lobbing in, and the
Yeah.
Donnarumma hand to it's amazing. And then of course there is the Cherky goal, which is more remembered for the Haaland v Van Dijk, you pull me, I pull you. What did you
Yeah,
make of
like
that?
can I just say something with the Donnarumma save as
Yeah.
well? Like there's a reason now, right, that people want 6'4", 6'5" goalkeepers with reach because, and the reason I bring that up is I watched Turkey's goal last week against Spurs and Vicario, right, just isn't big enough, right? I mean, I know people will say that you don't have to be that size to be a goalkeeper, but I think it's increasingly getting that way. That if you're not 6'2", 6'3", the unless like I've played with small goalkeeper, Julian Speroni at Crystal Palace was only 5'9", but I promise you his thighs and his ass were huge and he had a spring on him, right? So very often when those shots are going in the net, watch where they hit the net, right? Especially the ones like Turkey on the angle. Like if they hit the side netting, you go, okay, it was a good strike. But the Vicario one with Turkey actually hit the back of the net, even from that angle. And if you watch it, like he's just not big enough. And I know Barthez got away with it, but he doesn't have that spring either, Vicario. So he can't get those ones. Whereas with someone like Donnarumma, shots like that, they'd almost have to shave the inside of the post, such as his wingspan, to get in there. So I just think that was a critical thing because if you look at it, when the deflection is taken, he's already going one way, so he's not getting a huge spring. It's just his wingspan, his reach is what gets him there. So I think that's important just to point out that it's just his sheer size. Now, I'm not a huge fan of him as a goalkeeper. I still think that City are probably on the lookout for a new long-term goalkeeper. I just think that Ederson had dropped off so much, didn't fancy Ortega, and Donnarumma became available. He was like, okay, it's a stopgap. And I do think that Donnarumma is still a stopgap because, he's still prone to some moments of madness and he is severely limited with his feet. So, but that's just an overall point. Then the last incident, I don't have much. I don't take huge issue with how it played out. I think the right decision had come to. Now I know people might say, in the spirit of the game, just let the goal go in and we get on with it. But in reality, Szoboszlai is going to clear that off the line if Haaland doesn't pull him, right? So, but then you have to go back to Szoboszlai pulled him, right? Now, obviously, a 3-1 goal difference is going to make a difference. You look at the likes of Sunderland and Brentford, they'd argue, they're saying, well, that's another goal against for Liverpool. And ultimately, as well, Liverpool have a game midweek, right? So if we just go, it's fine, just play on, then the team that Liverpool are playing next week or midweek will say, well, why is Abazai play today? So I think increasingly, and this is where I feel sorry for referees or have a little bit of sympathy for them. We're saying every Monday we always seem to complain about the inconsistencies of decision and why can't the rules be applied? And I know it's people say, oh, you're being a stickler, just let it play out, 3-1, both players just get on with it. But ultimately, I think they got the right decision. So it's not a travesty. They got the right decision. 2-1 the game finished. It didn't have any outcome on the result. Essentially, the Man City was still going to win. So I'm not overly concerned. I think if the referee would have just waved play on, people would be complaining, saying, the other way as well. So I don't have huge issue with it. I know. I heard Gary Neville on commentary saying that fans come to play this. It's just a different type of drama now. We're going to VAR. And people, and I've heard people say already that VAR should be in the game, but VAR has done an awful lot of good as well. In terms of getting a lot of right decisions and things that referees miss. It's just a different type of controversy, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Like, we're not out in the green, lads. It's not just like natural justice. You punch me, but then I punch you back. Oh, let's just not send anyone off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the notion
like the hurling game on the weekend where two lads
yeah.
got red cards.
Well, that was crazy. I'm going to pick eeny, meeny, miny, you.
Yeah.
But like, it was a great football moment. Therefore, we don't apply the rules. That was the logic. There was no logic.
And that's wrong. That's
crazy.
so wrong. Because Zabazlai, if that ball was going in the net and the referee decided, I'm going to disallow the goal and I'm going to send off Zabazlai, then you're going, well, that's an incorrect. Just let the goal stand. But Zabazlai was going to clear that off the line and Haaland pulled him back.
Yeah.
So then you have to go, well, okay, why did Haaland pull him back? Well, he had the initial one. And on top of that too, it's a free kick. So it's not like I'm giving a penalty. So it's a free kick and 2-1, the integrity of the league has to be taken into account as well, the fairness and that argument, if it's a great football moment, I promise you, Sunderland, Brentford and the team Liverpool are playing midweek wouldn't see it that way. So I think you have an overall integrity issue as well.
What I do accept is it sort of felt wrong, like it feels unjust. And if it had been 1-1, and that was the difference between City winning, not winning, it would have felt horrible. But then, to be frank, it's on the cynicism of Szoboszlai. Like, you want to be angry at someone, it's on that guy going, I don't care, I'm just doing this. Yeah. But it would, like, 3-1 versus 2-1, okay, doesn't matter. But geez, if it was 1-1, it would have been very ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and again, maybe there would have been an argument. The referee would have said that, like, maybe at 1-1, but the very fact that it didn't have a bearing on the overall outcome of the game, I've got no issue with it. It added to the drama, in my opinion, because we were all stood up pointing. He fouled him, well, he fouled him first. Was he didn't know what, you know what I mean? So it was just a different type of drama as opposed to, because if VAR doesn't intervene there, then you don't have VAR for the Mark Gahey incident or the Bernardo Silva penalty incident, and I think they probably got those decisions one way or the other as well.
I did like that Haaland pulled him back in return. Like, sod
Yeah,
this. Who do
absolutely.
you think you are?
Yeah.
What did you make of Salah's performance?
Really poor. And I think it's going to be a huge problem for Liverpool now because the marker he threw down before Christmas is I can't be dropped. Otherwise, I will cause absolute carnage. And if I'm being honest with you, I think he deserves to come out of the team. He has had no, like, listen, for the 11 or 12 years or 10 years he's been at Liverpool, he's never really influenced games in terms of play. It's goals and assists is what he does. And they seem to have dried up now. Ait Nouri seemed to have his number. He seemed really quick and agile. Ait Nouri was able to deal with him. And I don't think teams are overly as concerned with him as what they used to be. So I think it's going to cause a problem for Slot now. I mean, he must be sitting like, I want to take him off, but I can't.
Yeah.
I want to drop him next week. Jesus, I have to go to the board now and say, listen, if I drop him or Mo, I'm thinking about leaving you out. It's huge. And just because of that marker that he threw down before Christmas, that like the shitstorm that brought on the football club. And people are talking about Slot's going to lose his job. Imagine going in saying, I need to do my job here, but if I do it, I could, and he throws his toys out of his pram again, I'm going to get sacked. So that has a huge bearing. I thought he was really, really poor. But again, I think there's overall issues, with both teams. One thing that struck me after about an hour is just the absolute dullness of both midfields. They were like six players in there, and there was nothing happening. And we'll get to the top end of the pitch as well for both teams. But I couldn't understand why Pep went with Nico O'Reilly and Rodri and Bernardo Silva. Now I know Bernardo Silva got man of the match, but it was more for his industriousness and his work rate and the fact that he seemed to be popping up everywhere as opposed to his guile and his influence on the game. He just seemed to be everywhere. His work rate was brilliant and he retained the ball excellently, but there was no spark. And then you go through Liverpool's midfield. I mean, they're as flat as you're going to see. I mean, Wirtz must be looking at two alongside him. Gravenberch just seems as low as any player can be. Can't seem to get up to speed of the game, either fatigued or just, I don't know what's wrong with him, mentally fatigued. McAllister, the midfield just, both midfields were really, I thought, really poor. Rodri does what he does, but I couldn't understand, even when he took off Marmoush, brought on Cherki, he did for Marmoush. I was thinking, surely Nico O'Reilly here, and you go for an attacking midfield, because we covered the Wolves Man City game last week or 2 weeks ago, and I thought Cherki was the best player on the pitch, playing in that central role, but it was just such a conservative midfield that Pep picked, and there was just a complete lack of quality. Now, I don't know if that's the manager's, and you look at Arsenal's midfield as well, it's very industrious as well. So I just don't know if managers are prepared to open up the middle of the park and play Cherki, Rodri and Bernardo Silva, and really get after Liverpool. Because then, like, I could put forward a point here that, like, if you're going to play that type of midfield, then like, you might as well not play Haaland, right? I mean, I would much rather play Cherki as the false nine and leave Haaland on the bench if you're going to play that industrious midfield, because at least then you have way more attacking options. Haaland's whole lifeblood is supply. Like, he has to get supply. Now, granted, you're going to say it's going to come from Marmoush and Semenyo, and I get the argument that you're away at Anfield and, he wants to be conservative. But considering it was a game where it was win or bust for City, it's either win or Arsenal going to waltz to the league. Okay, and again, I have no issue starting with that midfield, but when you're taking off Marmoush for Cherki, why not take off Nico O'Reilly and put Cherki on and get after the game? Now, he'll say he's justified, they won the game in the end, but I was just really disappointed with both sets of teams midfield. To be honest with you, I just don't think Liverpool have any other options, so I think they're in bigger problems. And when you move to the top end of the pitch, I am becoming more and more unhappy with Cody Gakpo with every passing week. I mean, I don't think that guy should be anywhere near that football starting 11. An impact player, absolutely. And then you throw in Salah on the other side, and you start to get a picture now of why Liverpool are really struggling. I mean, really, really struggling. Salah is Salah. When the goals don't come and the assists don't come, then you might as well, be sitting in the stand for the majority of the game. And I just don't get Cody Gakpo. I mean, he just seems to have 3, 4, 5 touches every time he gets the ball, and it just takes the impetus out of everything Liverpool are trying to do. People are making runs, and Ekitike essentially was the only player at the top end of the pitch, and starved of any type of service. Now I know he had that header which just seemed to come off the corner of his head, but really, really lackluster midfield and a really, really lackluster wingers. I think Liverpool are in trouble. And I don't know if and it's going to sound wild to say that they need to freshen the squad up after spending 450 million, but it's starting to look that way. Whereas I think Man City have options. They can change it up and become more attacking. I think Semenyo has been a great addition. Marmoush is brilliant. Cherki's brilliant. And obviously Haaland does what Haaland does, but he requires service. Ait Nouri is a good fullback. I think, I'm just going through the whole team. So I think Ait Nouri is really, really good. I think Nunes in Man City must be looking at an upgrade there at right back. I'm not sure what he brings to the party at right back. And then obviously Semenyo and Marmoush, Cherki, are superb wingers. Whereas I think Liverpool are looking a little bit stale.
I guess the interesting question now is whether this is some kind of impetus for City to go on a big run.
I've been saying it for weeks, Joe, because I feel like it feels like, when you're trying to start up a car and it just keeps misfiring, it just won't quite kick in, and it just won't. And that's just what it feels like with them. And with the way their season has gone, to be only 6 points, and I know we said it last week as well, to be only 4, but they've got one huge hurdle out the way now in terms of going to Anfield, and they will obviously be looking at that game at the Etihad against Arsenal as their opportunity. Arsenal are, I covered their game for Premier on Saturday. I was doing commentary on it. They're relentless. I just found myself using that word over and over again. Just really relentless in the way they're going about their business. But they're going to have to keep up that pace, and I think City will lay a glove on them, and then it's up to see how Arsenal react to see where the title ends up this year.
Yeah, we still have 13 games to go. There's still a lot of football, and the pace of it is going to quicken up with FA Cup, Carabao Cup final, Champions League, obviously. I mean, they're out again midweek, so Man City at home to Fulham is a very nice come down from the exertions of Anfield, whereas Arsenal are away to Brentford. And the smell of that straight away is a bit sticky. Brentford obviously winning against Newcastle 3-2. Level on points with Liverpool, Brentford. It is amazing of the kind of the upwardly mobile set that come after Arsenal, City, Villa, United, Chelsea, Liverpool. It's Brentford. Amazing kind of season. When you say Arsenal were relentless and they beat Sunderland 3-0, the first goal came kind of just before half time and Gyökeres got 2 in the second half. Relentless in a, God, this is so impressive kind of a way. Or relentless in a dripping water, unspectacular, the cup's sort of starting to get full kind of a way.
Yeah, it depends what your poison is. Arsenal fans will obviously pick the ladder there for you, but it's impressive how good they are. I was thinking about them. I was coming down the train on Saturday afterwards, and I was thinking about Arsenal. I just think, you look back the last 5 or 6 years of Arsene Wenger's reign, and it is 180 in the opposite direction, because Wenger was all about football, putting the performances in, and that you always felt that Arsenal had a soft underbelly, and they'd impress you, and they put together a great highlights reel, but they'd always lose the games you felt they were going to lose, and always beat the mid-table teams 3 or 4-0 and put on a huge display. And everyone always said, well, that's what Wenger wants, that's what he does. And now Mikel Arteta's Arsenal is almost a complete antithesis of everything that Arsene Wenger stood for, because they don't care about the performance, they don't care about being pretty. They are just so physically impressive. We watch Arsenal playing against Leeds last week and Sunderland this week. It's almost like watching an under-10s boys team play an under-8s boys team. You can just tell that, the under-10s are just physically stronger, and everything the under-8s are doing, the under-10s are just that little bit smarter, sharper, a little bit more physically developed, and they're just too strong. And Sunderland were like that. I thought Sunderland did really, really well.
Yeah.
But you always felt like it was just, they were on the rev limiter and they couldn't do any more. Whereas Arsenal were just this relentless wave after wave of attack. They sustain attacks better than any team I think I've ever seen. They are incredible. When they get in the defense, in their attacking third, Sunderland's defensive third, they recycle the ball so well. And I think there's a rigidity about that. And one of the things I was looking for on Saturday was, when the wingers have the ball, looking at the people that are ringing the box. They have 3 players just ringing the edge of the box, because they know, and then the 2 centre-backs underpinning that, only about 15, 20 yards behind it, because any clearance, Arsenal just pick it up and they recycle it and they go wide again. And they just wave after wave after wave of attack. And it's relentless. And you look at a lot of the goals are going in, you would always say, if you looked at them all individually, God, there's an element of fortune about that, or, there's nothing spectacular, it's just a cross in, or the defender couldn't quite get a good header on it. that is a result of just being under the pump
Yeah.
for like sustained periods. Like I was talking to you last week about that. It's just very, very difficult to play against. And again, that analogy of just like an under 10s boys team playing against under 8s, you can just see there's a physical difference. It's just a visual, like these guys are just too strong for them. And that's what Arsenal have going for them at the minute. But as I said, it's just amazing the evolution of over 10 years, that the end of the Wenger era to what Arteta's putting on the table now. As I said, it's almost the antithesis. I'd love to hear Arsene Wenger's thoughts of what his Arsenal has become.
The other game I know you watched over the weekend was at Old Trafford on Saturday. Another win for Michael
Yeah.
Carrick. 2-0 against Spurs. Romero red card didn't hurt things. Do you know what's kind of interesting? I could only half watch this game. I was doing Six Nations stuff. But the bits I kind of saw, I was like, where's my beloved, like, through the middle in Bromo gone? Like, this has been working a treat. Like, he's just made to be a striker. And so Carrick has moved him out to the left, Ahmad's on the right, and kind of Cunha and Bruno are sort of playing like as borderline false nines kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
they're flooding the middle. Now, one, I'm curious. You can tell us, do you think that worked? But more than that, I thought to myself, that sort of shows Carrick's got a bit about him here. Like, be very tempting early on to be like, oh my God, it's going very well. Just the same team, go do it again. I'm not going to tweak anything. But he obviously had the courage of his convictions to look at Spurs, identify something, and say, no, I'm going to do quite a significant little shift here. And for it to work out, it seems okay. Give us your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, I think he's very clever, Michael Carrick. I think he's identified the flaws in the Manchester United squad that has been there for a long time, and he's trying to cover them up. And you look at, we've sat at length several times and discussed about the lack of legs and the open spaces in midfield. And by playing with two false nines, so you've got two centre backs, two centre midfield players, and then two false nines, you're well set in the middle of the park. You've got a lot of bodies in there. And then you know that on the wide areas, you've got Diallo who's got pace and can run, and then Mbuemo as well. So you don't have to drop back into a low block. You can keep a nice structure in your team because you're not getting overrun in the middle of the park. You're protecting your lack of legs with Casemiro and
Menu.
Mainu, sorry. So you're kind of protecting them too as well. So they can sit and protect Harry Maguire, right? So you got your two centre backs and you got your two not too far in front of them, and then the other two aren't a huge distance in front of them either. So you're really taking control of the middle of the park. So that's why you don't see a lot of teams dominating Manchester United. They're really, really, that spine, that pillar right down the middle of the team are very good. And Bruno in that role, I think, is just exquisite. Like
amazing.
he's just like that's where he needs to play. Because I've said to you before, he's a joiner inner. He's help yourself. Do what you want to do. But putting him in that role doesn't have any detrimental effect to the team because there's a solidity behind it. And on top of that too, because the wide players are so good, they're so physical, they're so quick. There's not an expectancy on the fullbacks to join in either. So now all of a sudden, Diego Dallo is starting to look like a really good fullback because his game's been simplified for him. Just really, you're a defender. You don't have to join in. I don't need you to create hugely. I'm not going to get you on the ball all the time. So you just be a real good, solid defender and pass it to the wide player, get it inside to the central midfield players where you've got plenty of options. You've got it nice and layered now. Your centre backs, your midfielders, and then your 2 9s. So if you look inside, you'll have 3 sets of options,
Yeah.
and you'll have a wide player as well. So he's done really, really well, I think, like Michael Carrick. I suppose come back in on that, Joe, or anything.
Yeah, well, what struck me as interesting about it is I totally take your point. Oh, let's have the 2 and the 2 and the 2 and solidify midfield. That would strike me as a layman as something that you'd be more tempted to do against a better team. Like, I'd understand that against City or Arsenal where you fear you might be dominated in the middle. Like Spurs at home, that's where I was I was like, why is he what is
Because
it about
those flaws-
Spurs' fearsome midfield that he's worried about here?
But those flaws will be exposed. The weaknesses in Manchester United will be exposed if they go any other different way. Teams might get a foothold against them. All of a sudden, Harry Maguire has too much space to cover. Like he looks really, really insulated and really solid at the moment. So I think he's just like trusting that his top end of the pitch will score goals. They have attacking players now that can counter. Bruno's just in his element at the moment. And obviously Diallo is really strong. Obviously Mbuemo's Mbuemo. But I suppose just on a bigger picture, because we spoke previously about, why would Amorim not change? And I think Amorim could have gone to this system and all of a sudden get 4 results. And I think now the Manchester United board are looking, going, oh, we're not a million miles away. Like if the season started at Christmas, we'd be fighting for the league.
But they're
And I think
they're probably not a million miles away. Like, it was, the Amarin thing was just such a disaster, and it was like Emperor's New Clothes stuff the way he was
But
going
the
on. And
psychology of if he wilted and said like before Christmas in November, okay, fine, we'll go and play the
no,
system.
I hear you, but I
Yeah.
was just going to say, so like it was a joke, the stuff he was saying, and Mainu's not good enough, and all this kind of stuff. But to be fair, the summer transfer window was very good. Like Cunha and Embuemo in
Mm.
particular are brilliant signings. Mainu coming back in, like. The board are not insane to look around and say, mate, we're not a million miles away anymore. Like, it's a better transfer window than they had two,
Yeah.
3 years ago. You know that way?
Yeah, and I think if they stick with this, again, the argument against this is like, is what Michael Carrick doing sustaining over 38 games and a European run as well? The way we're playing. Can we keep up that? If we get a couple of injuries,
Yeah.
are we in trouble?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the argument. And it's going great at the moment, and the spirits are up and the confidence is up and they're doing really, really well. But a lot of managers would look at that and go, yeah, I'm not sure you're going to win a league playing like that unless you've got Arsenal's plethora of players and physicality that they have, is because that's what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Amarim was loath to move away from that, is because he just felt like, if I move away now and get a couple of results, my 3-4-3 is just gone. I'll never get back to it. They'll never let me play because they'll just say to me, no, we're not signing that player, because he does okay in this shape. So we're not selling him at a huge loss and then paying up his contract. So I think under the current guys, it's probably a better transition. I don't know where Michael Carrick sees this team long term if he does get the job. And let's be honest, he probably has as good a chance as anyone is getting it now. With 4 wins, he's going to secure Champions League football. Probably going to finish third. We'll argue he's a case to finish second. So I think if he finishes third, I think he gets the job. I don't think there's any excuse there to be made. So I think he's done brilliant. I think he's looked at what he had and he's just assessed it. And I think Steve Holland's obviously had a huge influence as
Yeah.
well. His experience.
Tricky for that board, though. There will be a degree of scar tissue or a degree of, like, no matter how well Carrick does, where they'll sit around and say, okay, if we give him the job and if this doesn't go well next season, we are just going to get destroyed again. Do you know what I mean? Like, how have you made the same mistake?
But I think the
again?
overriding feeling in those board meetings will be, we won't have to spend too much money.
Well, fair.
Because if we go in another direction, we might have to spend 300 million, whereas Michael Carrick just needs 2 signings.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll nick a third one, so we don't have to get rid of half the squad. So it's a much easier transition. So they're just going to run with it. And why not? Look, he's done well. He's come in, he's assessed the squad brilliantly. He's found a formation that suits them. Him and Steve Holland are obviously put on training sessions that have gotten the players' spirits up.
Yeah.
Because going every day doing Amarim's bloody shape and you're, getting hosed every week, you're just like, jeez, man, this is tiring. Whereas, spirits have been raised, good players are just being put in their positions and just been told, hey, this is what you do. I want you to go and do that.
Yeah. And is your boy Harry Maguire's not dropping as deep? That was always the fatal flaw you felt with him, that he was dragging everyone back. He's moving
Because
up a
I
little
think
bit.
because he feels really insulated. Dallow's not bombing on and leaving huge spaces down in front of him. Casemiro doesn't have to vacate anymore. Neither does Mainu. Like, Mainu couldn't get in the team because, as good and all his players he is, I think he lacks dynamism would be the word I would use for him, right? He's not, he doesn't cover those 10, 15 yards athletically. But what Carrick has done brilliantly is he's reduced all the spaces around him, so he doesn't have to, So I guarantee anytime Casemiro looks around, he's got someone 10 yards left, someone 10 yards right, someone 10 yards in front. Harry Maguire's not too far behind. So Harry Maguire feels a little bit more safe now in the position that he's playing because Dallow's not vacating and all of a sudden now he starts drifting wide, or Casemiro starts vacating and all of a sudden he's got decisions to make now in huge swathes of space, and he hasn't got the mobility for that. So I think Carrick deserves a huge amount of credit for that. I think United will more than likely finish third, and who knows, maybe even a little bit higher. They might even get second if they keep up this run of form. I think that 17 wins from 17 might be coming true.
Well, they have West Ham on Tuesday. That was great. Damien Delaney, thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.